In the most recent Skyblock announcement, Miniclune has announced a strength nerf. This will heavily impact the game, and it changes the damage formula the first time since release. Again, this isn't really the main point of this video, as, lots of other people have covered this already, but my main point is to try and balance dungeon classes at least for the release of Master Mode Floor 7. Because regular dungeons, no one really uses healers and tanks and stuff. People just go like Mage and maybe Berserker, and an Archer as well. But my point is, in Master Mode Floor 7, every class should be used and every class should be valued equally. Again, this video will be split up into 5 different sections: one for Berserker, one for Archer, one for Healer, one for Mage, and one for Tank, and some extra other stuff at the end. That being said, let's get into it. First off, we're going to try and fix Berserker. Now, by the strength nerf, mid-game Berserker has been utterly ruined. It is now not a viable class to go unless you're absolute endgame, and, well, I'm just going to buff. My proposition is to basically buff the Flower of Truth and buff the Soul Whip, 2 major clearing weapons for Berserker. I'm in 1.16, by the way, for some other things, but for the Flower of Truth, right now it's only focused on strength and a little bit of damage. What I feel like should happen is its damage should go up to 150, and its strength should be cut in half in return for 180 crit damage. This way, the strength and the crit damage values are balanced to make it more of a viable weapon. The same thing goes for the Soul Whip. And I feel like its damage should stay the same or go up to 175, and its strength should go down to 100, but it should gain 75 crit damage. Again, this balances their strength and their crit damage while giving it sort of a buff, so it's more balanced, and at the same time you can deal more damage, especially with the nerf. The next thing I propose is more ferocity, especially in unorthodox weapons like the Pigman sword and stuff, because these weapons are rarely used, no one uses them, but even though I feel like giving them ferocity buff with more harder to get and more unorthodox stats will allow more people to, test out different builds, and you never know, more people will start to use them and stuff. Again, it just is more options for Berserkers, and that's always a good thing. A final note I'd like to touch on when it comes to Berserkers is the Sinseeker Scythe. This is another thing leaked for the Enderman Slayer by Miniclune. There's a video of it that I'll link in the description. And basically what it does is by right-clicking with it, you teleport forward, and it creates this line thing. You can teleport as many times as you want, and then all enemies stuck that are like intersecting that line basically take the full-fledged force of whatever weapon you're holding. So say that this is a Sinseeker Scythe. I teleport forward and say that there's like a zombie or something here, and then I switch to my Shadow Fury. Then that zombie will take the hit of that Shadow Fury. And it's a really interesting weapon, and I feel like even that alone will be enough to restore, Berserker's clearing potential, because it just seems like a really interesting weapon overall. And I feel like that's a really good step in the right step in the direction that we need to go when it comes to Hypixel Skyblock clearing for Berserkers. But yeah, that's basically all. Okay, for Archer, I propose a new ability for them and some more stuff, more bows. Basically, just make them better at clearing. This is my creative command block server or world, so I can just test out making random items so they look more realistic. First off, I just kind of want to cover the Juju Shortbow, which is another item leaked for the Enderman Slayer by Miniclune, and it also looks like a really healthy addition to the game. Again, it brings more viability to archers for clearing. We all love that when classes become more balanced, but anyways, to get on with it, the first thing I want to introduce is, that was a spoiler, is a new class passive for Archer, and it's going to be called Trick Shot. While shifting, fully charged arrows will home to the nearest enemy in an X blocks radius. I think Archer 1 maybe will be 5 blocks, up to 15 at Archer 50, and it's basically just makes aiming sort of works in dungeon. Makes aiming work in dungeons. Yeah, I'm messing up my words. This will help archers with clearing, as I said, and it'll give more viability to more types of bows as well. And if it is too OP, you can just like nerf it by 50% if they're dupe archers or something. But I do feel like this will be really useful to make archers more viable for clearing in general. And another example of this is the poisoned longbow, a new weapon that'll allow you to just do DPS. So as you can see, it has 250 damage and 140 crit damage, and its left click ability will be Toxication. It throws your bow forward, and all enemies hit by the bow will receive a poison effect for 3 seconds. It has a cooldown of 20 seconds, and the amount of poisoning you get is dependent on if you're a regular enemy, a mini boss, or a boss. So for regular enemies, it's 30% of your HP per second. So for a total of 90% of your HP over a course of 3 seconds. Again, this allows them to not be one-shot by it, but so you still have to hit them twice, I would say. But at the same time, it can knock out a decent amount of their HP. The same thing goes for mini-bosses. It knocks out 30% of their HP, and for bosses, it's 3%. Bosses, I may need to buff that, but I don't know. I think that's good enough considering that Master Mode 7 Floor Necron will have like trillion HP or something. But it has a cooldown of 20 seconds. I feel like this will allow archers to have more ways to deal DPS in general. And yeah, that's basically archers. Yeah. Mage, right-click mage at the very least, is in serious need of help. It doesn't deal that much damage, especially in Master Mode, and people rely on left-click mage. So I have a few things that I want to fix with this. First off, I'm going to add a new class passive for mage. It's going to be called Concealment. You shift to turn invisible for X seconds. During this time, enemies will not target you, and it has a cooldown of 30 seconds. It won't work on mini bosses and bosses, so that, it won't be overly broken, and I think it'll start off at maybe like 5 seconds at Mage 1, and maybe go to like the 10 or 15 seconds at Mage 50. This will be useful for getting past enemy lines, maybe using like a charged up AoE attack or something, I don't know. There's a lot of potential there, and I feel like it'll further lean into the prospect of being a mage and using spells and stuff. Speaking of which, I made a new mage weapon called Explosive Wand. It gives 300 intelligence, and it gives 15% ability damage, which no other weapon gives ability damage so far, so I decided this should be the first one. And the item ability is Combustion. When you right-click, it stuns the first enemy you look at in a 15-block radius. After 3 seconds, the enemy will explode, dealing random damage to all other enemies in a 7-block radius, and has a cooldown of 25 seconds. I'm thinking this might be like an upgrade to maybe like an Ink Wand, becoming much more powerful, but again, having a longer cooldown. I'm thinking like, how it would work is, you use the ability, and you look at an enemy super far in the distance. After 3 seconds, the enemy will explode, and it'll just deal giant damage to all enemies in that general area. Again, this will help with, like unlike Hyperion, when you use it, you teleport to that location. This one, it's sort of like a Hyperion ability, sort of like Implosion, except you don't teleport forward, which I can see that being really useful in Master Mode, especially when you're on low HP. You can use a combination of the Concealment ability and this Explosive Wand to just wreak havoc. And another thing really is just to nerf left click mage if you have dupe mages, because most parties these days are just dupe mages all around, and I feel like that needs to change. It's not healthy for the game. As a reward for being a single mage, maybe your left-click mage abilities are buffed. I mean, I don't know how that will go, though. Again, I don't play Master Mode, like, higher floors that much, so I don't really, well, I haven't played Master Mode, like, 6 or 5 or 4 or whatever at all, but either way, I still feel like something needs to be changed in the meta. The final thing is more of a nitpick or whatever, but Wither Goggles should be legendary rarity. Don't know why they're epic. You have to get Cat of 28 to use them. Again, Cat of 28 isn't too difficult, except that, I feel like it should be natural if it's just legendary rarity as a base. But yeah, that's all for Mage. Currently, healers are just seen as a worse form of a tank. that shouldn't really be the case. Healers should have their own use, which is, as I said, healing. And especially since they're going to be more needed in Master Mode Floor 7, especially with the strength nerfs, I propose a new stat called Benevolence. Benevolence will increase our healing by a percentage, and that'll be really useful since, as I said, it just makes healers better in all forms. Like, for example, if you were to have the, Empowered Reforge, which increases all healing on others in dungeons by 10%, that would be changed to increases your benevolence by 10% while in dungeons or something like that. To add to that, pets will be changed to give benevolence. One is the ghoul pet. Speaking of which, healer pets are really bad, which is why I'm proposing changes to these. So the ghoul pet, amplified healing, will be changed to increases benevolence by 25%. Zombie arm can stay the same. In a Reaper Soul, fun fact, this ability does not work since the Reaper Scythe ability has been changed like months ago. So it's actually been almost a year, honestly, which is kind of upsetting. But this will be changed to increases necromancy damage by 50 to 75% damage, somewhere around that range. There's another pet, the jellyfish, and it will, since this pet's absolutely useless, Radiant Regeneration increases your base health regen by 100%. That sucks, but whatever. And it heals players within 8 blocks by up to 10 HP per second. That should be buffed to 150 to 250, because 110 HP per second is absolutely garbage. Same thing goes with the Enchanted Golden Apple effect in the Hungry Healer perk. Since it's a vanilla item, it doesn't really do much for you. So I feel like if the admins wanted to keep the Enchanted Golden Apple part, I feel like they should remove the cooldown, and it should apply the effect to all players in the dungeon, not just within 10 blocks. This way, it actually becomes at least a little useful, and it's another way to heal. In powerful potions, you can only use one potion per run, fun fact. So this is kind of useless as well, especially if you splash like rabbit potions or something before a dungeon run. So I feel like that should be changed to Stinger. It zaps 10% of a mob's HP per second in a 2-block radius and charges 10% of that into healing. And it caps at 2000 HP. It has a cooldown. Well, maybe a cooldown. I don't know. I'll go over that in a minute. But I'm going to use an example of this zombie. So say it has 100 HP. So it'll take 10 HP per second, and it'll take 10% of that into healing. So you get 1 HP of healing, and you deal 10 damage per second in a 2-block radius to this mob. But the thing is, it might be a little OP with Master Mode mobs, so that's why I think it should cap at maybe like 1000 to 2000 HP, or maybe it should have a cooldown of like 1 to 2 seconds. I don't know. Well, not 1 to 2 seconds, 2 to 5 seconds. But just based on that alone, I feel like the jellyfish pet needs to be revamped to be like a true healer pet. Another thing that needs to be changed is the orbs of healing. Now, these things absolutely suck. Well, they aren't bad, but they aren't good either. It grants 5% HP per second, and it drains 50 mana per second. I feel like they never released any upgrades to it, which is why they should add a moderate orb of healing, a greater orb of healing, and extreme orb of healing. Moderate will be 10% HP, greater will be 15, and extreme will be 20. And the mana drain can go up. It can go up like 50, 75, 100, 125, or something like that. But I just feel like they need more variety. Healers can have more support weapons, and this is a perfect example of one that needs to be like used or like upgraded. Because it can be very useful. A final thing to mention is the Mender Crown, sort of like the Wither Goggles I mentioned earlier. They should be buffed from epic rarity to legendary rarity. But yeah, that's all for healers. The final class is Tank, and to be quite honest, Tank is in a pretty good spot right now. It achieves all its goals well, and it does them in a way that doesn't require any bugs or unintentional features. Tanks, in general, are meant to, tank damage, and that's precisely what they do. The only recommendation is to maybe just introduce more support items, that maybe it's like you trade off strength and stuff for more true defense and stuff. Maybe a support item that gives you true anti-knockback, so you can defend against Necron. And yes, I am lagging super badly right now, I don't know why. But yeah, I feel like that's all to balance dungeon classes. Again, if you have any thoughts, leave them in the comments. I usually don't talk for this long, so sorry if I repeated myself or I stuttered or if I, said anything wrong or mispronounced anything. Anyways, that's all. See ya.